The man who smiled through pain. In 2016, the world only saw the crown. It shimmered across screens in gold and obsidian as T'Challa, the Black Panther, stood tall, a prince, a king, a symbol. Wakanda Forever became more than a catchphrase, it was a salutation, a revolution in pop culture. Children wore the mask. Adults carried the message. The world finally saw a black superhero not only as the lead, but as the legend. But behind the scenes, when the cameras weren't rolling, the man behind the mask was fighting for his life. At the height of his fame, Chadwick Boseman was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. He was just 39. The news didn't go public. No press release. No statement. Only a few knew, his family, his inner circle. The man who could have said everything chose to say nothing. And then, he whispered something extraordinary into the world. He kept working. Films. Interviews. Hospital visits. Charities. Late-night show appearances. All while undergoing chemotherapy. All while enduring surgeries. All while his body slowly betrayed him. And yet, every red carpet photo, every speech, every scene, he smiled. Not the fake Hollywood grin forced on command, but a smile that had weight, as if he knew something we didn't. A truth carried silently, nobly, like a secret he had no intention of letting burden anyone else. 2. The weight of legacy. Early in his career, Chadwick was told more about who he wasn't than who he could be. You're too intense. Too serious. You'll never lead a commercial film. Or worse, there's not really a market for African stories. He corrected all of them, not with retaliation, but with roles. James Brown in Get On Up, the electrifying godfather of soul. Thurgood Marshall in Marshall, the brilliant legal mind who cracked foundation into American civil rights. Jackie Robinson in 42, the man who broke baseball's color line. Each performance wasn't just acting, it was resurrection. It was as if Chadwick didn't play characters, but channeled them. You didn't watch. You witnessed. But Black Panther hit differently. He once told a story, when 42 came out, he met a young boy with terminal cancer. The boy told him he was holding on, just until he could see Black Panther. Said it with stars in his eyes. Chadwick choked up telling it. Because, at the time, he was going through chemo too. They were both waiting to see the future. 3. The quiet on set. He never once complained, said Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther. Not during the 16-hour shoot days. Not during the grueling fight choreography. Not during the press tours and public appearances. People just thought he was quiet. Focused. Humble. Nobody knew that between scenes he'd rest hunched in corners, conserving energy. That his dietary needs were regimented, not because he was being difficult, but because his body required it. There were whispers. He's lost weight. Is he okay? That beard's a little fuller now, hiding something. No one pried. That was Chadwick, always respectful, always reserved. His silence was mistaken for mystery. But it was discipline. Vision. Resilience. He didn't owe the world his pain. And yet, he still gave it everything he had. 4. The hospital visits. Here's what didn't make Instagram. In between shooting and flying, Chadwick quietly began visiting children's hospitals, smiling, holding hands, laughing with kids in the pediatric oncology units. He knew what treatments they were going through. He, too, lost weight. He, too, suffered in silence. Doctors would watch as he'd grip a tiny hand, look into a pair of tired eyes, and whisper, "You are not alone. You are a warrior." It was T'Challa speaking. It was Chadwick, broken inside but standing like a king. Later, when photos emerged, him thinner, more fragile, the internet turned toxic. Cruel comments. Speculation. Black Panther, one user wrote. Boseman never replied. He just kept working. Because some silences speak louder than rage. The last performance. In Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, his final film, Chadwick played Levy, a trumpet player dancing dangerously close to madness and brilliance. The role required everything: rage, vulnerability, youth, arrogance, trauma, hope. What we didn't know then, as we watched him sweat and seethe and scream on screen, was that he knew this would be the last time he'd get to bare his soul. Denzel Washington, who helped fund Chadwick's tuition at Howard years prior, watched the performance and reportedly said, "He's like James Dean. There's something burning there." When the credits rolled, nobody on set knew this would be goodbye. And like any great tragedy, the comprehension only came after the curtain fell. On August 28, 2020, Chadwick Boseman died in his home. Surrounded by his wife and family. A warrior. A king. He was 43. The silence was broken not by his voice, but by our gasps. That day, the internet stopped. The Marvel cast cried. Children clutched their toys. And millions felt an ache they couldn't name. Because we lost more than a man. We lost what he carried so quietly: hope, strength, integrity. But even in death, his silence remained purposeful. It refused to turn illness into pity. Pain into spectacle. He proved, even through dreadful suffering, how art could still lift the soul. He taught us that real strength isn't in what you show the world, but what you carry when nobody is watching. 6. The people who knew. After the world learned of his passing, a collective silence fell over Hollywood, not unlike the silence Chadwick had lived within. Tributes poured out. They weren't rehearsed, not polished PR statements. They were raw. Painfully real. Lupita Nyong'o wrote, "He wore the crown with dignity. In real life and in death." Michael B. Jordan, his on-screen rival and off-screen brother, said, "I wish we had more time." You could feel the regret laced in every syllable, not just for the loss, but for the fact he hadn't known how much Chadwick had been holding alone. That became a recurring pain for many. Directors, castmates, friends, all learning after the fact that while they were laughing or rehearsing or joking on set, Chadwick was shouldering an invisible, crushing weight. But that's who he was. He didn't want anyone's eyes on his cross. He just wanted to help people carry theirs. 7. The choice to be silent, or not. Some questioned the silence. In the age of openness and awareness, why didn't Chadwick share his battle with cancer sooner? Why not become a spokesperson, a face for early detection, for funding, for research? He could have built platforms, gathered sponsors, changed public health policies. But not everyone wants to be a symbol while still bleeding. And maybe, that's part of what made his silence sacred. He wasn't ignoring the world, he was holding it carefully, choosing when and how to offer pieces of himself. He didn't want the story to be about his sickness. He wanted it to be about his characters, his people, his culture. He wanted the little boy in Ghana seeing Black Panther projected on a white sheet under moonlight to feel pride, not pity. He wanted the young girl in Chicago to write a college essay on Chala, not Chadwick's illness. He wanted to be a bridge, not a burden. Chadwick chose silence not because he was hiding, but because he was protecting something. 8. The echoes after. His silence didn't end at his death. It lingers, in classrooms, in medical centers, in acting schools where students rewatch his performances and study the pain behind his eyes. It echoes in the decisions made by Marvel, who chose not to recast Chala, in tribute to the man who gave the role a soul no one else could replicate. It ripples across communities where conversations about men's health, about Black health disparities, about mourning heroes, have finally opened, because someone once chose not to speak, and in doing so, gave others permission to begin. But the most powerful echo? It lives in the hearts of those who, like Chadwick, suffer silently, yet still fight to bring beauty into the world. 9. The Younger Brother's Letter. One story, almost buried under headlines, came from Chadwick's real-life brother, Kevin. He described a moment, just before Chadwick passed, when they prayed together. Chadwick, reduced in strength but full in spirit, said, "Man, I'm in the fourth quarter. I just want to finish strong." None of us knew then just how strong that finish would be. From diagnosis to death, he filmed 7 major films. He didn't withdraw. He didn't resign. He created. He gave. He served. And like all great protagonists, he left when the story felt complete, not convenient. The final lesson. There's a famous line from Black Panther. "In my culture, death is not the end. It's more of a stepping-off point." It's easier to believe that when someone like Chadwick has stepped off. Because he didn't just leave, he passed the baton. To young actors of color who now believe a leading role is theirs to claim. To directors who understand diversity is not trend, but truth. To audiences learning that heroes are not perfect, but purposeful. But maybe the deepest takeaway rests within the space he never tried to fill with noise. Silence is not the absence of meaning. It is often the womb in which greatness is born. Chadwick's silence was not weakness. It was legacy-making energy. Focused. Heavy. Intentional. The world often pressures us to speak, to share constantly, to fight for attention. But Chadwick taught us that sometimes the strongest statement is to carry your mission quietly, to bleed behind the curtain and still give your audience a standing ovation performance, because they deserve nothing less. He could have chosen 1,000 headlines. Instead, he chose one eternal truth. "Tell them I lived. And I gave." Epilogue, The Child and the Mask. Months after Chadwick's passing, there's a viral video of a child, no older than 7, in his pajamas. He's lined up his Black Panther action figures. In front of them, he's holding a small funeral. He buries the one without the helmet. And then he salutes. Wakanda forever. It was pretend, yes. Play. But sometimes, children understand grief more than we do. The way they honor without hesitation. The way they remember without complicating it. That little boy wasn't mourning just a superhero. He was saying goodbye to a man who taught him, without words, that power doesn't come from what you fight with, but what you fight for. And that even in silence, a king can still roar.